Our planet hides some places that seem to break the rules of physics. Mountains that twist, lakes that burn, and deserts that shape themselves. These aren't illusions, they're real locations. Join me for today's video. I'm going to count down 20 places with strange properties. Number 20. Magnetic Hill in India. On a stretch of road in northern India, about 30 kilometers from Leh in the Union territory of Ladakh, is a short section of highway that kind of defies gravity. It's known as Magnetic Hill. It's a place where vehicles left out of gear appear to roll uphill on their own, a phenomenon that's puzzled and entertained travelers for decades. At first glance, the slope of the road seems to rise towards the mountains, and yet cars, motorcycles, and even water poured on the ground appear to move uphill. Locals have long referred to the site as the Gravity Hill, while travelers have speculated about hidden magnetic forces strong enough to pull metal vehicles against gravity. While the Indian Air Force, which operates a base nearby, even warns pilots of a magnetic anomaly in the area, adding to the site's mystery. In reality, though, the explanation is way simpler and purely optical. Magnetic Hill is one of several known gravity hills in the world where the surrounding land creates the illusion of a gradient reversal. Because the horizon is obscured and the natural reference points like trees and mountain slopes are tilted at similar angles, the human eye misjudges what's level and what's not. The result is that a slight downhill slope appears to be uphill, making it seem as though gravity has been reversed. Surveying instruments did confirm that the road actually declines gently towards the Indus River, meaning vehicles will roll forward naturally, pulled not by magnetism but by the Earth's gravitational field. That said, the site does still feel genuinely unique. Tourism authorities have leaned into this mystery, designating the area with a roadside sign that reads, "Magnetic Hill, the phenomenon that defies gravity." And visitors often test themselves by stopping their cars at the painted marker, putting them in neutral, and watching as the vehicles appear to move backwards uphill at speeds of about 10 to 20 kph. Without a clear horizon or vertical reference point, even trained observers will misinterpret the elevation, and the same principle explains other mystery spots in countries like Canada, Japan, and the US, all of which produce this same visual effect. Number 19. The Hessdalen Lights in Norway. In the central valley of Norway, strange glowing lights have been appearing in the sky for decades, hovering, pulsing, and drifting across the land before vanishing without a sound. Known as the Hessdalen Lights, these luminous orbs have been one of Europe's longest-running natural mysteries, observed since at least the early 1930s and still occasionally visible today. Now, the Hessdalen Valley is about 75 miles south of Trondheim. It's an isolated area that's surrounded by forested mountains. And beginning in the early 1980s, residents began reporting these bright, floating lights that would appear several nights a week. Descriptions varied. Some were white or yellow, others red or blue. Some moved slowly, while others darted rapidly across the sky. The lights could hover for minutes or streak along the valley before disappearing, often leaving witnesses puzzled and uneasy. In 1983, scientists from Østfold University College and the Norwegian Defense Research Establishment launched Project Hessdalen, a study that remains active. Automated observatories equipped with radar, magnetometers, and spectrographs have all confirmed that real luminous phenomena happen in this valley, visible both to the naked eye and on these instruments. The leading hypothesis involves ionized air plasma generated by geologic and atmospheric conditions that are unique to this valley. Hessdalen does sit on top of rocks that are rich in zinc, iron, and sulfur, and the river running through it carries mineralized water. And when these minerals interact with the surrounding atmosphere under certain conditions, including temperature inversions, humidity, and piezoelectric discharges from quartz-bearing rocks, they may produce electrically charged plasma that glows. However, not all appearances fit the same pattern. Some lights behave like self-contained glowing orbs that maintain constant brightness for long periods, suggesting an energy source of some kind or feedback mechanism that's not yet fully understood. Some researchers have proposed that the lights could result from dust combustion involving airborne particles from the valley floor, or electrochemical processes that are triggered by the slow oxidation of metallic minerals, but none of these explanations have been proven, though all are within the realm of physics and chemistry rather than the supernatural. While many places around the world report rare light anomalies, few have such frequent, measurable events. Today, the valley still attracts scientists and skeptics. Researchers do continue to monitor the electromagnetic fields, seismic activity, and the atmospheric ions to better understand how these lights might form. For the residents of Hessdalen, the glow on the horizon has become part of the landscape. It's a quiet, recurring reminder that not every natural phenomenon is fully understood. Number 18. The Sailing Stones of Death Valley. In a corner of Death Valley National Park is Racetrack Playa. It's a huge dry lake bed that's so flat and barren it looks like another planet there. But what makes this place cool isn't its desolation, it's the stones. Scattered across the cracked clay surface are dozens of rocks that appear to have moved on their own, leaving these long, curving trails behind them in the hard-packed mud. For decades, these sailing stones seem to defy any kind of reasoning, drifting across the desert floor without any human or animal intervention. Early accounts of this phenomenon date back to the 1940s, when the park visitors noticed heavy rock, some weighing more than 600 pounds, resting at the ends of these long, parallel grooves that stretched for dozens of meters. There were no footprints, no evidence of animals or machinery, and no pattern to the direction of the movement. Scientists initially suspected strong wind, flash floods, or even magnetic influences, but none of these explanations held up under observations. It wasn't until the early 2010s that researchers equipped with time-lapse cameras and GPS sensors finally witnessed the process in action. In 2014, a study led by Richard Norris and James Norris revealed that the stones move only under a very specific and rare set of conditions, when a thin layer of water and ice forms on the playa after the winter rain. At night, freezing temperatures create these sheets of transparent ice around the partially submerged stones. As the sun rises, the ice begins to thaw and break into these floating panels. Light winds, often just about 3 to 5 meters per second, that's about 7 to 11 miles an hour, push the ice sheets across the shallow, slick surface, slowly nudging the stones along with them. As the ice drifts, it drags the stones, sometimes in unison, sometimes in diverging paths, which carve these visible trails in the soft mud beneath. This process only happens rarely and invisibly to most visitors. Years can pass between the movement events, and each one only lasts a few hours before the ice melts completely. But now that the mechanism is understood, the mystery has only deepened in its appreciation rather than vanished. It is an elegant reminder of how seemingly magical events can emerge from simple, patient, natural forces: the wind, the ice, sunlight, and time. Number 17. The Boiling River of the Amazon. In the Peruvian Amazon, hidden in the dense rainforest near the town of Pucallpa, flows a river so hot it can boil animals alive. Known to locals as the Xinetimpixca, meaning boiled with the heat of the sun, this natural wonder is one of the few known boiling rivers on Earth, which is a rare geothermal system existing far from any active volcano. The temperatures of the river here range from about 122 degrees Fahrenheit to 203 degrees. That's about 50 Celsius to 95 Celsius. That's hot enough to cook small creatures instantly. Steam constantly rises from its surface, especially in the morning air, and the surrounding vegetation will glisten with condensation. The sight seems impossible. Geothermal rivers of this kind are almost always associated with volcanic systems, yet the nearest active volcano is more than 400 miles away. Scientists first learned of Xinetimpixca in the early 20th century through the local accounts, but systematic studies didn't begin until the 2010s. In 2011, Peruvian geoscientist Andres Russo conducted the first detailed survey of the site. His measurements confirmed that the river is indeed naturally boiling over large stretches, with temperatures maintained by deep geothermal heating. The area does sit on an active tectonic zone, where deep earth heat can sometimes reach the surface without any volcanic activity. The leading hypothesis is that rainwater and groundwater percolate deep into the Earth's crust through fault lines, where they're heated by residual geothermal energy and then rise back to the surface along fractures. The chemistry of the river is remarkable too. The waters are slightly acidic and rich in minerals like silica, sulfate, and calcium carbonate. These properties, combined with the extreme temperature, create a nearly sterile environment. Yet some heat-tolerant microorganisms like thermophilic bacteria and archaea have been discovered living along the riverbanks. Studying these organisms have provided some new insights into how life might adapt to high-temperature ecosystems and may even inform the search for life on other planets. The river, though, remains largely inaccessible. It's located in a deep region of protected rainforest. For both scientists and local peoples, it does represent the intersection of nature and respect, a reminder of the power that still resides quietly within the Earth. Number 16. The Devil's Kettle. Along the shore of Lake Superior, in the northeastern reaches of Minnesota, the Brule River splits into two channels as it flows through the Judge C.R. Magny State Park. One branch tumbles normally down a waterfall, while the other does something a bit stranger. It just vanishes completely. The disappearing stream plunges into a circular hole in the rock called the Devil's Kettle, where it appears to be just swallowed by the earth. For decades, no one could determine where the water went. This mystery began attracting serious attention in the 1960s when hikers and park rangers realized that the river's western fork seemed to end. Water poured into the hole and never reappeared downstream. No visible spring, seepage, or outlet could be found. Scientists and curious visitors launched numerous experiments to trace its path. Dyes, ping-pong balls, GPS trackers, even logs dropped into the churning pool. None of them ever resurfaced, leading to speculation that the water might flow into an underground cavern, a hidden aquifer, or even directly into Lake Superior. However, as intriguing as those theories were, the answer turned out to be a bit less dramatic, though no less interesting. In 2017, hydrologists from the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources conducted a series of controlled flow measurements upstream and downstream of the falls. Using these instruments, they found that the total water volume remained nearly identical on both sides. This meant that the water entering Devil's Kettle rejoined the river almost immediately underground, not through some distant tunnel or volcanic fissure, but through cracks and joints in the bedrock just below the visible surface. Geologically, this does make sense. The area's rock is composed of ancient volcanic basalt that's riddled with fractures that were formed millions of years ago, and those cracks allow the water to move laterally beneath the riverbed. The illusion of disappearance persists because the outlet is hidden beneath white water farther downstream, where the river's flow is chaotic and opaque. While the mystery may be solved, the site is deeply compelling. The Devil's Kettle is visually dramatic, and it shows us how even well-traveled landscapes can have surprises when geology and hydrology intersect. The park, though, does restrict visitors from throwing objects into the hole now, both for safety and environmental reasons, but the curiosity continues to draw thousands of people each year. Number 15. The Door to Hell. In the middle of Turkmenistan's Karakum Desert, a massive fiery pit burns day and night. This is a hole in the earth that looks like a portal. It's officially known as the Darvaza gas crater. It's more commonly called the Door to Hell. Now, the crater is about 230 feet wide and 100 feet deep. It's been burning continuously since 1971. The story of the crater begins with a Soviet drilling operation. In 1971, a team of geologists searching for natural gas reserves set up an exploratory rig near the small village of Darvaza. Shortly after drilling began, the ground beneath the rig collapsed, exposing a large natural gas pocket. To prevent the release of a potentially dangerous methane gas, the team decided to ignite it, expecting the fire to burn off within a few days. Instead, the gas kept flowing, and the crater has been burning ever since. What was once a drilling site is now a 24-hour-a-day inferno. The crater's interior glows an intense orange red, and its floor is covered in flickering blue flames that roar and shift with the wind. Temperatures near the edge can exceed over 750 degrees Fahrenheit, and even at a distance, the heat is palpable. Scientists, of course, have studied the site to understand both the combustion process and the stability of the underlying gas reservoir. Measurements indicate that methane continues to vent from deep within the earth, feeding the flames in a slow, continuous burn. Although there have been discussions by Turkmen authorities about extinguishing it to conserve gas and reduce emissions, it does remain active, and it's become a national tourist attraction. Despite that ominous nickname, the Door to Hell, it's not a supernatural wonder but a vivid demonstration of how industrial accidents can create some enduring landmarks. Its constant fire has altered the surrounding environment, slightly warming the air in its immediate vicinity and attracting small insects that seem to be drawn to the light and heat, only to perish in flame. Few places on the Earth illustrate so clearly the meeting of human error and nature's power. What began as a brief safety measure has become an unintentional symbol, a perpetual flame marking the abundance of Turkmenistan's natural gas reserves and the consequences of humanity's attempts to control the forces beneath our feet. Number 14. The Blood Falls in Antarctica. At the edge of Taylor Glacier, there's a frozen expanse that flows slowly into the McMurdo Dry Valleys. There's a streak of vivid crimson ice that looks disturbingly like a wound in the glacier itself. It's known as Blood Falls. This strange outflow of iron-rich brine stains the surrounding ice in deep shades of red and orange. For over a century, scientists have studied this phenomenon, and the feature was first discovered in 1911 by the Australian geologist Griffith Taylor, for whom the glacier is named. At the time, the researchers believed the red color came from algae, as that was a common explanation for odd tints in polar ice. But later analysis showed that the source of the color is purely chemical. The water emerging from beneath the glacier is a hypersaline brine saturated with iron and oxidized compounds. When it comes into contact with air, the iron reacts to the oxygen and rusts, turning the water a distinct blood-red hue. Now, the water itself is unlike anything else found on the continent. It originates from a subglacial pool buried about 1,300 feet below ice. Trapped there for possibly millions of years, this reservoir remains liquid due to the high salt concentration. It's roughly 3 or 4 times saltier than seawater. That salt lowers the freezing point of the brine, allowing it to remain fluid even in temperatures well below zero. In 2015, scientists confirmed that this subglacial reservoir contains a unique microbial ecosystem. Tiny bacteria live down there without sunlight or oxygen, metabolizing sulfur and iron instead. These microbes have survived isolated from the surface for millions of years, thriving in an environment that was once thought too extreme for life. This discovery has had major implications for understanding Earth and maybe even the other planets. The environment beneath the glacier closely resembles the icy subsurface oceans believed to exist on moons like Europa and Enceladus, and if microbes can survive sealed under Antarctic ice, they might also exist elsewhere in the solar system. But it is entirely natural, a product of salt, pressure, iron, and chemistry working in one of the harshest environments on the planet. It does show us that even in the coldest desert on the planet, where almost nothing grows, Earth's hidden fluids still move, and its hidden life still endures. Number 13. The Moeraki Boulders in New Zealand. Along the coast of New Zealand's South Island, across the sands of Koehoe Beach, sit dozens of nearly perfect stone spheres. Some are small enough to fit into a person's arms, others measure over 6.5 feet across. These formations are known as the Moeraki Boulders, and they've fascinated geologists for generations, not for what they hide, but for how they came to be. The boulders are not placed artifacts or volcanic remnants. These are natural concretions, massive spherical stones formed by the gradual accumulation of minerals around a central core. They originated in marine mudstones about 60 million years ago when sediment at the bottom of an ancient seabed began to harden. Over time, minerals like calcite, dolomite, and iron oxide cemented the surrounding sediment together, growing outward, layer by layer, much like pearls forming in oysters. Their shapes are astonishingly regular, the result of a consistent mineral deposition in calm marine conditions. Each one did form around an initial nucleus, a fossil maybe, a shell fragment, or even a piece of organic debris, and it grew outward as mineral-rich water percolated through the sediment. Cracks that run across the surface, called septaria, formed later as the concretions dried and contracted. Now, these cracks were later filled with minerals like quartz and calcite, giving many of the boulders that distinctive vein pattern. When split open, some of them reveal these dazzling crystalline interiors that will glint in the sunlight, like geological geodes that were born from ancient mud. Maori legend explains their presence differently. They're believed to be the remains of food baskets and water gourds that were washed ashore from the wreck of a legendary canoe. In that sense, the site holds geological and cultural significance too. Erosion continues to reveal new boulders each decade as the cliff slowly retreats, while the waves and salt weather the older ones back into fragments. The process going on is continuous. It links the present beach directly to events millions of years in the past. Number 12. Lake Natron. In northern Tanzania, near the border with Kenya, is one of the most beautiful, yet biologically extreme bodies of water on Earth, Lake Natron. It's set against the slopes of Mount Gelai. This shimmering red and pink lake looks otherworldly, but that beauty hides a brutal chemistry. Lake Natron is so caustic and salty that few creatures can survive in it. Its strange properties are entirely real. It's the result of extraordinary combinations of heat, evaporation, and geology. Now, the lake covers about 390 square miles, though its size and shape change dramatically with the rain. It is a soda lake, meaning its waters are rich in sodium carbonate and other alkaline salts. These compounds come primarily from the volcanic ash carried into the lake by streams and groundwater from the nearby Odonyo Lengai, the only volcano on Earth that erupts carbonatic lava, a rare low silica type rich in sodium and calcium. With no outlet, the lake functions like an enormous evaporative basin. As water from seasonal rains and inflowing rivers evaporate, it leaves behind concentrated brine saturated with sodium carbonate and those other salts. The lake's pH regularly exceeds 10.5. That's comparable to household ammonia, and its surface temperatures can reach 140 degrees Fahrenheit. Under these conditions, most aquatic life will not survive. The caustic water will burn skin and strip organic material from animals that will fall in. But despite this hostility, it teems with specialized microorganisms. Cyanobacteria and extremophile algae thrive in this alkaline water, turning it red, orange, or pink depending on their pigments and density. The microorganisms here form the base of a unique food web that supports enormous colonies of lesser flamingos, which feed almost exclusively on this algae. The lake is the single most important breeding ground for this species in East Africa. It hosts over 2 million birds during peak seasons. Their legs and skin are adapted to withstand the lake's alkalinity, allowing them to nest on the mudflats that are otherwise inaccessible to predators. There is a common myth that Lake Natron turns animals to stone, inspired by some photographs of calcified birds taken along the shores. In reality, though, animals that die and fall into the lake are simply coated in sodium carbonate minerals as the water evaporates, creating these natural mummifications. It's eerie, yeah, but purely chemical, not instantaneous. Number 11. Spotted Lake. In the hills of British Columbia's Okanagan Valley, there's a small, shallow body of water that transforms every summer into a pattern of vivid, multicolored circles. It's known as Spotted Lake. This strange and sacred lake is unlike any other on Earth. These unusual spots are not the result of algae or pollution, but of nature's own mineral design, a chemical mosaic that appears as the lake evaporates each year. Spotted Lake is a saline basin, meaning it has no outlet and loses water only through evaporation. It's fed by underground springs and winter runoff, and it's rich in a unique mix of minerals including calcium, sodium, magnesium, and other sulfates. But as temperatures rise and the water begins to evaporate, the mineral concentrations increase until they reach saturation. When this happens, the minerals crystallize on the surface, forming dozens of distinct circular pools. Each one has a different color depending on its specific chemical composition and the light conditions. Blues, greens, yellows, even purples can appear in clusters that are separated by thin mineral ridges. The lake's spots will change in hue and shape from day to day as the evaporation continues and the mineral balance shifts. The lake sits in an ancient glacial depression that was formed at the end of the last ice age. The surrounding valley's climate, with hot summers and minimal rainfall, allow the lake's minerals to concentrate instead of being flushed away. This kind of stable, repeating cycle of filling and evaporation is what produces the lake's consistent, spotted appearance year after year. As seen from above, the lake resembles kind of like a painter's palette, an array of natural colors that are set in perfectly round forms that almost look artificial. Yet every spot is shaped by natural physics, evaporation, solubility, and light. Spotted Lake is more than an oddity. It's a reflection of cycles that have persisted for millennia, where the water, sun, and minerals will combine each summer to create one of nature's most quietly spectacular displays. Number 10. Blue Lake Cave in Brazil. Hidden in Brazil is one of the most mesmerizing and fascinating underground sites on the planet, the Blue Lake Cave. In the limestone hills near the town of Bonito, this immense subterranean cavern houses a perfectly still, crystal-clear lake that shimmers with an otherworldly blue. The cave's entrance, a steep drop of about 100 meters, opens into a chamber measuring roughly 100 meters wide and 70 meters high. It's large enough to fit a cathedral in there. At the base lies the lake, extending at least another 80 meters deep, though its full depth remains uncertain because divers haven't yet reached the bottom. During certain months, between September and February, the angle of the morning sun here aligns perfectly with the entrance. As the sunlight streams in, it reflects off particles of calcium carbonate that's suspended in the water and scatters predominantly blue wavelengths. The result is an intense sapphire color that fills the entire chamber, transforming it into a luminous world. But beyond this visual spectacle, the cave holds some immense geological importance. In the 1990s, scientists discovered fossils of prehistoric animals at the lake's edge, including remnants of giant ground sloths, saber-toothed cats, and ancient armadillo-like creatures. These fossils, dated to the late Pleistocene epoch, about 10 to 40,000 years ago, and suggest that the cave may have once served as a natural trap or a watering hole for these kinds of mega animals during drier periods. The temperature here remains cool year-round, between 68 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit, and it provides a stable environment that resists biological growth. And because of its importance, the Blue Lake Cave was declared a protected natural monument by the Brazilian government in 1978, and access is restricted to guided tours along a designated path, ensuring that this limestone and water are preserved. Number 9. The Giant's Causeway. On the northern coast of Northern Ireland is a stretch of shoreline that's so precisely geometric it seems to have been made by humans. The Giant's Causeway, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, is made up of about 40,000 interlocking columns, most of them hexagonal, that form a natural pavement that sort of descends from the cliffs into the sea. The scene is pretty cool, an orderly array of stone pillars, some rising in perfect steps, and others are submerged by the waves. It's a pattern so regular that for centuries it seemed impossible to believe it was natural. But it is. The Giant's Causeway was formed about 50 to 60 million years ago during the Paleogene period, when intense volcanic activity in the area spread molten basalt. As the lava cooled, it contracted, forming fractures that propagated downward and horizontally, much like drying mud that'll crack into polygons, and cooling lava contracts into a network of columnar joints. And the most stable configuration for these cracks is a hexagon, which minimizes tension and evenly distributes the stress, hence the regular six-sided shapes. Local legends offer a different explanation long before the geology did. According to the Irish mythology, the causeway was built by a giant, Finn MacCool, as a bridge to Scotland to challenge a rival, Benadonnar. When Finn realized his opponent was even larger than himself, he fled back to Ireland, and his wife disguised him as a baby. Seeing the infant, the Scottish giant assumed that Finn's father must be enormous, and ran home in terror, destroying the causeway behind him. Interestingly, identical basalt columns appear on a Scottish isle across the North Channel, lending the myth a touch of continuity. But modern analysis confirms that both formations share the same origin. The lava that formed them were part of the same basaltic plateau. Over millions of years, erosion removed much of the plateau, leaving behind these spectacular remnants. Today, the Giant's Causeway is one of Northern Ireland's most visited landmarks, and it's protected by the National Trust. These cliffs and columns provide valuable insight into all the volcanic process, while the aesthetics continue to inspire artists, architects, and scientists. Number 8. The Fairy Circles of Namibia. In the grasslands of the Namib Desert, stretching for hundreds of kilometers along the western coast of Africa, it's one of the planet's most puzzling natural patterns, the Fairy Circles of Namibia. There are these thousands upon thousands of circular patches of barren earth, each surrounded by a ring of tall grass. The circles range from 2 to 15 meters or 6 to 50 feet in diameter, and they're spaced with near-perfect regularity across the ground. Seen from the air, they form a honeycomb-like mosaic. For decades, scientists and locals and travelers have tried to explain them. Some early theories were whimsical, that they were the footprints of the gods, landing sites for spirits, or even the marks of dragon's breath. Others sought some biological causes, suspecting toxic plants or burrowing animals, and the mystery endured because the circles seem to form spontaneously and persist for decades, and then disappear and reform elsewhere. Scientific studies over the past 50 years have produced several credible explanations, and as it turns out, both plants and animals likely play roles. One major hypothesis links the circles to the activity of sand termites. These insects feed on underground roots, which kill the vegetation within the zones, but leaving grass just outside the area intact. The resulting bare patch allows the rainwater to seep into the sandy soil, which the termites then use to survive. Evidence from excavations and soil analysis support this theory. Researchers have found termite tunnels beneath many circles, and the soil tends to hold more moisture than the surrounding grassland. Another explanation focuses on vegetation self-organization. That's a phenomenon observed in other ecosystems. In extremely dry conditions, plants compete fiercely for scarce water. As some plants die, they leave open patches where water can collect and percolate deeper into the soil. Grass then grows even more vigorously at the edges of these patches, stabilizing them and preventing recolonization in the center. But the current scientific consensus, based on fieldwork and modeling, suggests that both of these processes may operate together. And beyond their formation, though, they do have measurable ecological importance. These bare patches act as water reservoirs that store moisture longer than the surrounding soil. And similar circles have been discovered in parts of Australia's Pilbara region, raising further questions about whether the process is universal to arid climates. Though not identical, they do share the same self-organizing spacing pattern seen in Namibia. Number 7. The underwater waterfall illusion in the Indian Ocean. Just off the coast of Mauritius, near the Lemorne-Brabant Peninsula, the ocean appears to perform an impossible trick. Water seems to pour downwards into an enormous abyss beneath the waves. From the air, it looks exactly like a waterfall that's cascading into the sea. This is a surreal optical illusion that's made it one of the most photographed coastal features in the world. Now, this phenomenon, often called the underwater waterfall, is not a waterfall at all, but a clever deception of perspective and physics. The illusion is created by the movement of sand and silt along the ocean floor. Here, the shallow coastal shelf of Mauritius abruptly ends and it drops into the Mascarene Plateau, which is an escarpment that plunges thousands of meters into the abyssal plain. As the ocean currents flow around the island's southwestern tip, they sweep the lighter-colored sand off the shelf and down the slope. From above, particularly in aerial photographs or drone footage, this movement creates a dramatic gradient of color. Turquoise shallows blend into the deep blue water, while the streaks of suspended sand give the appearance of a downward cascade, as if the sea itself were pouring into a hidden chasm. The illusion is really visible between May and October when the prevailing southeast trade winds drive the lagoon currents. Satellite imagery confirms that the falling streaks change shape over time as the sand is redistributed. While there is no true waterfall beneath the waves, the Mauritius illusion beautifully demonstrates how light, depth, and sediment can all combine to create misperceptions. Pilots and photographers who have flown over the site describe it as one of the most breathtaking coastal views anywhere on the planet. It's an optical masterpiece that's shaped by ocean dynamics and geology. It's a reminder that even the most stunning natural wonders often owe their magic to our perspective, to how we see rather than to what truly is. Number 6. Pamukkale. In southwestern Turkey, the hillside of Pamukkale, meaning cotton castle in Turkish, seems like it's draped in white silk from a distance. Up close, it's a landscape of gleaming terraces that are sculpted by the steady flow of mineral-rich hot springs, and it's been doing this for thousands of years. The effect is surreal and entirely natural, a living sculpture made of stone, water, and time. The phenomenon happens because the area is sitting on top of a geothermal fault line. Hot groundwater, saturated with calcium carbonate, emerges from the underground springs. As the water flows down the slopes and cools, it releases carbon dioxide, causing the dissolved calcium carbonate to crystallize into travertine, which is a smooth white rock that forms on the terraces. Over centuries, new layers of travertine have built up like a frozen waterfall, creating the cascading pools seen today. Pamukkale's terraces are continually changing as the water will shift direction and new formations appear. The site's been famous since antiquity. The ancient city of Hierapolis was built atop it by the Romans, who believed the waters had healing powers. It's the same geothermal system that still feeds the pools where visitors wade today. Though tourism once damaged parts of the formation, careful restoration and regulation have helped preserve the delicate balance. Walking along the terraces, though, feels like you're standing inside of a cloud, an improbable landscape born entirely from minerals and motion. Number 5. Lake Baikal's ice rings. Each winter, Lake Baikal, the world's deepest and oldest freshwater lake, freezes into a sheet of ice more than a meter thick. Yet even in this frozen stillness, something mysterious happens. An enormous dark ring, sometimes up to 7 kilometers, that's 4 miles across, appear on the lake's surface, visible only from aircraft or satellite. These perfectly circular features seem artificial, but they're natural, a rare thermal phenomenon that still isn't fully understood. Scientists studying the ring since 2009 have found that they form above warm, methane-rich water rising from the depth of the lake. As the slightly warmer water upwells, it melts thin circular zones in the ice, creating these translucent rings bordered by thicker, whiter ice. The temperature difference is small, it's only a few degrees, yet it's enough to change the transparency and texture of the ice dramatically. The rings tend to form in the same general regions of the lake, particularly above underwater ridges and faults where the gas seeps are known to happen. And to anyone viewing from above, it's immense and mesmerizing, these ghostly halos that are floating on the world's deepest lake. They're not crop circles, nor they're signs of disturbance, just evidence of how the coldest water on Earth is alive with movement that's below the ice. Number 4. The Devil's Tower. Rising from the plains of northeastern Wyoming, Devil's Tower looks like a colossal tree stump that's carved in stone, a solitary column of vertical rock that dominates the landscape. It stands 1,267 feet above the surrounding ground, and it's one of the most recognizable geological formations in North America. And for centuries, it's inspired stories, legends, and scientific curiosity. Now, geologically speaking, the Devil's Tower is a laccolith. That's a mass of molten magma that forced its way upwards through softer sedimentary rock, but never erupted to the surface. As the magma cooled slowly underground around 50 million years ago, it contracted and cracked into long hexagonal columns, the same type of structure that was seen at the Giant's Causeway in Northern Ireland. Over time, the surrounding softer rock eroded away, which left behind the tower's vertical cliffs. The columns are extraordinarily regular. They stand straight for hundreds of feet, giving the tower that distinctive ribbed appearance. And the uniformity is so striking that early observers doubted it could be natural. Native American tribes, including the Lakota and Cheyenne, have long considered it sacred. And many legends describe a great bear clawing at the rock, creating these vertical grooves as it chased people who had sought refuge. But for modern scientists, the tower is a record of Earth's internal forces that are frozen in place. And for climbers, it's a world-class challenge, the site of the first documented rock climb in U.S. history, completed in 1893 using a wooden ladder that's still visible. Devil's Tower is both scientifically understood and visually miraculous. It is a monument to volcanic pressure and erosion, sculpted into something so improbable that it still seems mythical. Number 3. The Crooked Forest. In northwestern Poland stands a grove of about 400 pine trees that all share one peculiar feature. Each trunk bends sharply at its base, curving horizontally for a meter or two before sweeping upwards again. Known as the Crooked Forest, this small patch of woodland looks as though gravity briefly failed. The trees planted in the 1930s grow in otherwise straight rows and appear healthy, yet every trunk is bent in the same direction, towards the north, and each curve begins at the same height above the ground. The cause of this strange uniformity has never been conclusively proven, though several well-supported theories exist. The most likely explanation is human intervention. Forestry experts believe the trees were deliberately manipulated when they were young to produce curved timber for use in shipbuilding, furniture, or yoke construction. Once World War II began, the project was abandoned, leaving behind these distorted trees to mature naturally. Other hypotheses include heavy snowfall damage maybe, or genetic mutation. They've been largely ruled out though. Tree ring studies show consistent growth and no trauma, typical of a natural bending. Whatever the exact cause, though, the result is an uncanny natural sculpture, row after row of identical pines bending gracefully before reaching the sky. Number 2. Salar de Uyuni's Mirror Effect. The world's largest salt flat, the Salar de Uyuni, during Bolivia's rainy season, it undergoes one of the most surreal transformations. When just a few centimeters of rainwater accumulate on its flat reflective surface, the entire 4,000 square mile expanse turns into a perfect mirror, reflecting the sky so precisely it becomes impossible to tell where the land ends and the air begins. This dazzling illusion is entirely natural. The salt crust formed by the evaporation of these prehistoric lakes is almost perfectly level. The elevation varies less than a meter across the entire basin, and when covered with shallow water, it acts like an enormous reflective surface. The mirror effect is so precise that NASA uses it to calibrate their Earth-observing satellites. The reflection of the sky can distort the depth perception, making people and vehicles appear to float. It's a place where the boundary between solid and liquid seems to dissolve entirely, where the ground reflects the clouds, stars, and even the Milky Way with amazing clarity. Outside the rainy season, though, it reverts to its more familiar cracked white expanse, and it's mined for salt and lithium-rich brines. But for a few months each year, it becomes something special, a landscape that turns physics into art, showing how simplicity and symmetry just combine to produce one of the Earth's most amazing optical illusions. Number 1. The Bermuda Triangle. Few places on the planet have captured our imagination quite like the Bermuda Triangle, a huge stretch of the Atlantic Ocean bounded roughly by Miami, Florida, San Juan, Puerto Rico, and Bermuda. Within this triangular region, dozens of ships and aircraft have reportedly vanished under mysterious circumstances over the past century. But beyond the myths of alien abductions and underwater energy vortices, the Bermuda Triangle is a real geographic area with measurable natural characteristics that make it genuinely unusual. The legends began in the mid-20th century. In 1950, journalist Edward Van Winkle Jones wrote a short article describing several unexplained disappearances of ships and planes in the region. 2 years later, author George Sand popularized the term Bermuda Triangle, and by the 1960s, books and magazines had turned it into a global mystery. The disappearance of Flight 19 in 1945, a group of 5 U.S. Navy Avenger torpedo bombers vanished during a training flight, became the Triangle's defining event. Their radio transmission suggested confusion about location, compass failure, and rapidly deteriorating weather before contact was lost. In the decades since, oceanographers and aviation experts have carefully examined the region's physical characteristics and have revealed a series of natural explanations that together account for nearly every recorded incident. One key factor is magnetic variation. The Bermuda Triangle is one of the few places on Earth where true north, the geographic North Pole, and magnetic north, the magnetic pole, line up perfectly. Navigators accustomed to adjusting their compasses for magnetic direction could find their readings off by several degrees if they're unaware of this anomaly, potentially leading to significant navigation errors, especially before the advent of GPS. Another factor is the region's volatile weather. The triangle sits within one of the world's most active zones for sudden storms and squalls. Warm, moist air from the Gulf of Mexico meets cooler Atlantic air masses, producing rapid shifts in visibility and wind speed. The Gulf Stream, which is a strong ocean current moving northward, also plays a major role. It can reach speeds of over 4 knots and quickly disperse debris, making wreckage hard to find. Combined with the ocean's depth, the nearby Puerto Rico Trench goes down more than 26,000 feet. This explains why many vessels lost here are never recovered. But beyond the natural forces, human factors explain much of the legend. Many accidents attributed to the triangle happen in one of the world's busiest shipping and flight corridors, where statistical probability alone predicts frequent incidents. Pilot error, mechanical failure, poor weather, they've all been confirmed as causes in numerous cases once thought mysteries. Still, the area remains scientifically fascinating. Studies by the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration and the U.S. Coast Guard have found that the number of disappearances in this triangle is not significantly higher than in any other heavily traveled ocean region. Yet the myth persists because the area's combination of magnetic quirks, deep trenches, unpredictable weather, and tragic accidents creates some good ground for mystery. Even stripped of the supernatural, the Bermuda Triangle is extraordinary in a scientific sense. It's a microcosm of the ocean, where currents, magnetism, and storms all seem to converge in one dynamic space. This is a region where the natural world appears for a moment to bend the rules, and where the line between fact and fascination still drifts like a ship in the fog.